And therefore, and I might get a waking and a busy beholding to this ghostly work within in my soul. I would then have a heedlessness in eating and in drinking, in sleeping, and in speaking, and in all mine outward doings. For surely I trow I should rather come to discretion in them by such a heedlessness, than by any busy beholding to the same things, as I would by that beholding set a mark and a measure by them. Truly, I should never bring it so about, for aught that I could do or say what men say will, and let the proof witness. And therefore lift up thine heart with a blind stirring of love, and mean now sin, and now God. God wouldest thou have, and sin wouldest thou lack. God wanteth thee, and sin art thou sure of. Now, good God help thee, for nowest thou need. Here beginneth the 43. That all witting and feeling of a man's own being must needs be lost if the perfect tie-on of this work shall urily be felt in any soul in this life. Look that naught work in thy wit, nor in thy will but only God, and try for to fell all witting and feeling of aught under God, and tread all down full far under the cloud of forgetting, and thou shalt understand that thou shalt not only in this work forget all other creatures than thyself, or their deeds or thine, but also thou shalt in this work forget both thyself and also thy deeds for God, as well as all other creatures and their deeds. For it is the condition of a perfect lover, not only to love that thing that he loveth 208 Cloud of Unknowing more than himself, but also in a manner for to hate himself for that thing that he loveth. Thus shalt thou do with thyself. Thou shalt loathe and be weary with all that thing that worketh in thy wit, and in thy will unless it be only God. For why, surely else, whatsoever that it be, it is betwixt thee and thy God. And no wonder though thou loathe and hate for to think on thyself, when thou shalt always feel sin, a foul stink ing lump thou wottest never what, betwixt thee and thy God, the which lump is none other thing than thyself. For thou shalt think it wand and congealed with the substance of thy being, yea, as it were without departing. And therefore break down all wit, ting and feeling of all manner of creatures, but most busily of thyself. For on the witting and the feeling of thyself hangeth witting and feeling of all other creatures, for in regard of it, all other creatures be lightly forgotten. For, and thou wilt busily set thee to Cloud of Unknowing 209 the proof thou shalt find when thou hast forgotten all other creatures and all their works, yea, and thereto all thine own works, that there shall live yet after, betwixt thee and thy God, a naked witting and a feeling of thine own being, the which witting and feeling behoveth always be destroyed, ere the time be that thou feel sooth fastly the perfection of this work. 208 Cloud of Unknowing more than himself, but also in a manner for to hate himself for that thing that he loveth. Thus shalt thou do with thyself, thou shalt loathe and be weary with all that thing that worketh in thy wit, and in thy will unless it be only God. For why, surely else, whatsoever that it be, it is betwixt thee and thy God. And no wonder though thou loathe, and hate for to think on thyself, when thou shalt always feel sin, a foul stink. In lump thou wottest never what, betwixt thee and thy God, the which lump is none other thing than thyself. For thou shalt think it wand and congealed with the substance of thy being, yea, as it were without departing. And therefore break down all wit, ting and feeling of all manner of creatures, but most busily of thyself. For on the witting and the feeling of thyself hangeth witting and feeling of all other creatures, for in regard of it, all other creatures be lightly forgotten. And thou wilt busily set thee to Cloud of Unknowing 209 the proof. Thou shalt find when thou hast forgotten all other creatures and all their works, yea, and thereto all thine own works, that there shall live yet after, betwixt thee and thy God, a naked witting and a feeling of thine own being, the which witting and feeling behoveth always be destroyed, ere the time be that thou feel sooth fastly the perfection of this work. Here beginneth the 44th who, a soul shall dispose it on its own part, for to destroy all witting and feeling of its own being. But now thou askest me, how thou mayest destroy this naked witting and feeling of thine own being. For adventure thou thinkest that in it were destroyed, all other lettings were destroyed, and if thou thinkest thus, thou thinkest right truly. But to this I answer thee and I say, that without a full special grace full freely given of God, and thereto a full AC according ableness to receive this grace, on thy part, this naked witting and feeling of thy being may on no wise be destroyed. And this ableness is Cloud of Unknowing 211 naught else but a strong and a deep, ghostly sorrow. But in this sorrow needeth thee to have discretion, on this manner, thou shalt be wary in the time of this sorrow, that thou neither too rudely strain thy body nor thy spirit, but sit full still, as it were in a sleeping device, all foresobbed and forsunken in sorrow. This is true sorrow, this is perfect sorrow, and well were him that might win to this sorrow. All men have matter of sorrow, but most specially he feeleth matter of sorrow, that wotteth and feeleth that he is. All other sorrows be unto this in comparison but as it were game to earnest. For he may make sorrow earnestly, that wotteth and feeleth not only what he is, but that he is. And whoso felt never this sorrow, he may make sorrow, for why, he felt yet never perfect sorrow. This sorrow, when it is had, cleanseth the soul, not only of sin, but also of pain that it hath deserved for sin, and thereto it 212 Cloud of Unknowing maketh a soul able to receive that joy, the which reaveth from a man all witting and feeling of his being. This sorrow, if it be truly conceived, is full of holy desire, and else might never man in this life abide it nor bear it. For were it not that a soul were somewhat fed with a manner of comfort of his right working, else should he not be able to bear the pain that he hath of the witting and feeling of his being. For as oft as he would have a true witting and a feeling of his God in purity of spirit, as it may be here, and sit hen feeleth that he may not. For he findeth evermore his witting and his feeling as it were occupied and filled with a foul stinking lump of himself, the which behoveth always be hated and be despised and forsaken. If he shall be God's perfect disciple learned of himself in the mount of perfection, so oft he goeth nigh mad for sorrow, insomuch that he weepeth and waileth, striveth, curseth, and banneth, and shortly to Cloud of Unknowing 2:13 say, him thinketh that he beareth so heavy a burthen of himself that he careth never what betides him, so that God were pleased, and yet in all this sorrow he desireth not to unbe, for that were devil's madness and despite unto God. But him listeth right well to be, and he intendeth full heartily, thanking to God for the worthiness and the gift of his being, for all that he desire unceasingly for to lack the witting and the feeling of his being. This sorrow and this desire behoveth every soul have and feel in itself, either in this manner or in another, as God vouchsafeth for to learn to his ghostly disciples after his well-willing, and their according ableness in body, and in soul, in degree and disposition, ere the time be that they may perfectly be wonned unto God in perfect charity, such as may be had here, if God vouchsafeth. Here beginneth the 45th a good declaring of some certain deceits that may befall in this work. But one thing I tell thee, that in this work may a young disciple that hath not yet been well used and proved in ghostly working, full lightly be deceived, and, but he be soon wary, and have grace to leave off and meek him to counsel, peradventure be destroyed in his bodily powers and fall into fantasy in his ghostly wits. And all this is along of pride, and of fleshliness and curiosity of wit, and on this manner may this deceit befall a young man or a woman, new set to the school of devotion, heareth this sorrow and this desire be read and spoken, how that a man Cloud of Unknowing 2:15 shall lift up his heart unto God, and unceasingly desire for to feel the love of his God. And as fast in a curiosity of wit they conceive these words not ghostly as they be meant, but fleshly and bodily, and travail their fleshly hearts outrageously in their breasts, and what for lacking of grace and pride and curiosity in themselves, they strain their veins and their bodily powers so beastly and so rudely, that within short time they fall either into frenzies, weariness, and a manner of unlisty feebleness in body and in soul, the which maketh them to wend out of themselves and seek some false, and some vain fleshly and bodily comfort without, as it were for creation of body and of spirit, or else, if they fall not in this, else they merit for ghostly blindness, and for fleshly chafing of their nature in their bodily breasts in the time of this feigned beastly and not ghostly working. For to have their breasts either inflamed with an unkindly heat of nature 2:6 Cloud of Unknowing, caused of misruling of their bodies, or of this feigned working, or else they conceive a false heat wrought by the fiend, their ghostly enemy, caused of their pride and of their fieshliness and their curiosity of wit. And yet peradventure they ween it be the fire of love, gotten and kindled by the grace and the goodness of the Holy Ghost. Truly, of this deceit, and of the branches thereof, spring many mischiefs, much hypocrisy, much heresy, and much error. For, as fast after such a false feeling, cometh a false knowing in the fiend's school, right as after a true feeling, cometh a true knowing in God's school. For I tell thee truly, that the devil hath his contemplatives as God hath his. This deceit of false feeling, and offy, false knowing following thereon, hath all diverse and wonderful variations. After J. The diversity of states and the subtle conditions of them that be deceived, I. Aseth the true feeling and knowing cloud of unknowing 2:17 of them that be saved. But I set no more deceits here but those with the which I trow thou shalt be assailed, if ever thou purpose thee to work in this work. For what should it profit to thee to wit how these great clerks, and men and women of other degrees than thou art, be deceived? Surely, write naught. And therefore I tell thee no more but those that fall unto thee if thou travail in this work. And therefore I tell thee this. For thou shalt be wary therewith in thy working, if thou be assailed there with. Here beginneth the 46th chapter. A good teaching how a man shall flee these deceits, and work more with a listiness of spirit, than with any boisterousness of body, and therefore for God's love be wary in this work. And strain not thine heart in thy breast over rudely, nor out of measure, but work more with a HST than with any worthless strength. For ever the more listily, the more meekly and ghostly, and ever the more rudely, the more bodily and beastly, and therefore be wary. For surely what beastly heart that presumeth for to touch the high mount of this work, it shall be beaten away with stones. Stones be hard and dry in their kind, and they hurt full sore where they hit. And surely such rude cloud of unknowing 2:19 strainings be full hard fastened in fleshliness of bodily feeling, and full dry from any witting of grace, and they hurt full sore the silly soul, and make it fester in fantasy feigned of fiends. And therefore be wary with this beastly rudeness, and learn thee to love listily, with a soft and a demure behavior as well in body as in soul. And abide courteously and meekly the will of our Lord, and snatch not over hastily, as it were a greedy greyhound, hunger thee never so sore. Right as thou on nowise wouldest let him wit how fain thou wouldest see him, and have him or feel him. This is childishly and playingly spoken, thee think peradventure. But I trow whoso had grace to do, and feel as I say, he should feel good gamesome play with him, as the father doth with the child, kissing and clipping, that well were him so. Here beginneth the 47th a slight teaching of this work in purity of spirit, declaring how that on one manner a soul should show his desire unto God, and on ye contrary unto man. Look thou have no wonder why that I speak thus childishly, and as it were followly and lacking natural discretion, for I do it for certain reasons. And as me thinketh that I have been stirred many days, both to feel thus and think thus and say thus, as well to some other of my special friends in God, as I am now unto thee. And one reason is this, why that I bid thee hide from God the desire of thine heart. For I hope it should more clearly come to his knowing, for thy profit and in fulfilling of thy cloud of unknowing 2:21 desire, by such an hiding, than it should by any other manner of showing that I trow thou couldst yet show. And another reason is, for I would by such a hid showing bring thee out of the boisterousness of bodily feeling into the purity and deepness of ghostly feeling, and so furthermore at the last, to help thee to knit the ghostly knot of burning love betwixt thee and thy God, in ghostly one head and according of will. Thou wottest well this, that God is a spirit, and whoso should be woned unto him, it behoveth to be in sooth fastness and deepness of spirit, full far from any feigned bodily thing. Sooth it is that all thing is known of God, and nothing may be hid from his witting, neither bodily thing nor ghostly. But more openly is that thing known and showed unto him, the which is hid in deepness of spirit, sith it so is that he is a spirit, than is anything that is mingled with any manner of bodily-ness. For all bodily thing is farther 222 cloud of unknowing from God by the course of nature than any ghostly thing. By this reason it seemeth that the whiles our desire is mingled with any matter of bodily-ness, as it is when we stress and strain us in spirit and in body together, so long it is farther from God than it should be. And it were done more devoutly and more listily in soberness, and in purity and in deepness of spirit. And here mayest thou see somewhat, and in part the reason why that I bid thee so childishly cover and hide the stirring of thy desire from God. And yet I bid thee not plainly hide it, for that were the bidding of a fool, for to bid thee plainly do that which on no wise may be done. But I bid thee do that in thee is to hide it. And why bid I thus? Surely because I would that thou cast it into deepness of spirit, far from any rude mingling of any bodiliness, the which would make it less ghostly and farther from God in asmuch, and because I wot well that ever the more that thy spiriteth of cloud of unknowing 223 ghostliness, the less it hath of bodily-ness and the nearer it is to God. And the better it pleaseth him and the more clearly it may be seen of him. Not that his sight may be any time or in anything more clear than in another, for it is ever more unchangeable, but because it is more like unto him, when it is in purity of spirit, for he is a spirit. Another reason there is, why that I bid thee do that in thee is to let him not wit, for thou and I and many, such as we be so able to conceive a thing bodily the which is said ghostly, that peradventure an I had bidden thee show unto God the stirring of thine heart, thou shouldest have made a bodily showing unto him, either in gesture or in voice, or in word, or in some other rude bodily straining, as it is when thou shalt show a thing that is hid in thine heart to a bodily man, and insomuch thy work should have been impure. For on one manner shall a thing be showed to man, and on another manner unto God. Here beginneth the 48th how God will be served both with body and with soul, and reward men in both. And how men shall know when all those sounds and sweetness that fall into the body in time of prayer be both good and evil. I say not this because I will that thou desist any time, if thou be stirred, for to pray with thy mouth, or for to burst out for abundance of devotion in thy spirit, for to speak unto God as unto man, and say some good word as thou feelest thee stirred, as be these, good Jesu, fair Jesu, sweet Jesu, and all such other. Nay, God forbid thou take it thus, for truly I mean not thus, and God forbid that I should depart that which Goddeth Cloud of Unknowing 225 coupled, the body and the spirit. 4. God will be served with body and with soul both together, as seemly is, and will reward man his meed in bliss, both in body and in soul, and in earnest of that meed. Sometimes he will inflame the body of devout servants of his here in this life, not once or twice, but peradventure right oft, and as him liketh, with full wonderful sweetness and comforts, of the which some be not coming from without into the body by the windows of our wits, but from within, rising and springing, of abundance of ghostly gladness, and of true devotion in the spirit. Such a comfort and such a sweetness shall not be had suspect, and shortly to say, I trow that he that feeleth it may not have it suspect, but all other comforts, sounds and gladness and sweetness that come from without suddenly, and thou wet test never whence, I pray thee have them suspect, for they may be both good and evil, wrought by a good 226 Cloud of Unknowing angel if they be good, and by an evil angel if they be evil, and this may on no wise be evil, if their deceits of curiosity of wit, and of unordained strain, ing of the fleshly heart be removed as I learn thee, or better if thou better mayest. And why is that? Surely, for the cause of this comfort, that is to say, the devout stirring of love, the which dwelleth in pure spirit. It is wrought of the hand of Almighty God without means, and therefore it behoveth always be far from any fantasy, or any false opinion that may befall to man in this life, and of the t'other comforts and sounds and sweetness. How thou shouldest wit whether they be good or evil I think not to tell thee at this time, and that is because me think that it needeth not. For why, thou mayest find it written in another place of another man's work 1,000-fold better than I can say or write, and so mayest thou this that I set here, far better than it is here. But what Cloud of Unknowing 227 thereof, therefore shall I not let, nor it shall not noy me, to fulfill the desire and the stirring of thine heart, the which thou hast showed thee to have unto me before this time in thy words, and now in thy deeds. But this may I say thee of those sounds and of those sweetnesses, that come in by the windows of thy wits, the which may be both good and evil. Use thee continually in this blind and devout and this listy stirring of love, that I tell thee, and then I have no doubt that it shall not well be able to tell thee of them. And if thou yet be in part astonished of them at the first time, and that is because that they be uncouth, yet this shall it do thee, it shall bind thine heart so fast, that thou, ere the time be that thou be either certified of them within, wonderfully by the Spirit of God, or else without by counsel of some discreet father. Here beginneth the 50th chapter, which is chaste lieu. And how in some creatures such sensible comforts be but seldom, and in some right oft. And hereby mayest thou see that we should direct all our beholding unto this meek stirring of love in our will, and in all other sweetness and calm thoughts, bodily or ghostly, be they never so liking nor so holy, if it be courteous and seemly to say, we should have a manner of recklessness. If they come, welcome them, but lean not too much on them for fear of feebleness. For I will take full much of thy powers bide any long time in such sweetle feelings and weepings. And Jay, venture thou mayest be stirred for love God for them, and that shalt thou feel by this, if thou grumble over mucal Cloud of Unknowing 231 when they be away. And if it be thus, thy love is not yet neither chaste nor perfect. For a love that is chaste and perfect, though it suffer that the body be fed and comforted in the presence of such sweet feelings and weepings, nevertheless yet it is not grumbling, but full well pleased for to lack them at God's will. And yet it is not commonly without such comforts in some creatures, and in some other creatures such sweetness and comforts be but seldom. And all this is after the disposition and the ordinance of God, all after the profit and the needfulness of diverse creatures. For some creatures be so weak and so tender in spirit, that, unless they were somewhat comforted by feeling of such sweetness, they might on no wise abide nor bear the diversity of temptations and tribula tions that they suffer and be travailed within this life of their bodily and ghostly enemies. And some there be, that they be so weak in body that they 232 Cloud of Unknowing may do no great penance to cleanse them with. And these creatures will our Lord cleanse full graciously in spirit by such sweet feelings and weepings. And also on the t'other part there be some creatures so strong in spirit, that they can pick them comfort enough within in their souls, in offering up of this reverent and this meek stirring of love and accordance of will, that them needeth not much to be fed with such sweet comforts in bodily feelings. Which of these be holier or more dear with God, one than another, God wots and I not. Here beginneth the 150th chapter. That men should have great wariness so that they understand not bodily a thing that is meant ghostly, and specially it is good to be wary in understanding of this word in ***, and of this word up. And therefore lean meekly to this blind stirring of love in thine heart. I mean not in thy bodily heart, but in thy ghostly heart, the which is thy will. And be well wary that thou conceive not bodily that is said ghostly. For truly I tell thee, that bodily and fleshly conceits of them, that have curious and imaginative wits be cause of much error. Ensample of this mayest thou see, by that I bid thee hide thy desire from God in that in thee is. For peradventure an I had bidden thee 234 Cloud of Unknowing show thy desire unto God, thou shouldest have conceived it more bodily than thou dost now, when I bid thee hide it. For thou wottest well, that all that thing that is wilfully hidden, it is cast into the deepness of spirit. And thus me thinketh that it needeth greatly to have much wariness in understanding of words that be spoken to ghostly intent, so that thou conceive them not bodily but ghostly, as they be meant. And specially it is good to be wary with this word in, and this word up. For in misconceiving of these two words hangeth much error, and much deceit in them, that purpose them to be ghostly workers, as me thinketh, somewhat what I by the proof, and somewhat Byj hearsay, and of these deceits list NN. Tell thee a little as me thinketh, a young disciple in God's school, new turned from the world. The same weeneth that for a little time that hedge hath given him to penance and prayer, taken by counsel in Confess Cloud of Unknowing 235 Sion, that he be therefore able to take upon him ghostly working of the which he heareth men speak or read about him, or peradventure readeth himself. And therefore when they read or hear spoken of ghostly work, and specially of this word, how a man shall draw all his wit within himself, or how he shall climb above himself, as fast for blindness in soul, and for fleshliness and curiosity of natural wit, they misunderstand these words, and ween, because they find in them a natural covetise to hid things, that they be therefore called to that work by grace, insomuch that if counsel will not accord that they shall work in this work, as soon they feel a manner of grumbling against their counsel, and think, and adventure say to such other as they be, that they can find no man that can wit what they mean fully, and therefore as fast for boldness and presumption of their curious wit, they leave meek prayer and penance over 236 Cloud of Unknowing soon, and set them, they ween, to a full ghostly work within in their soul. The which work, an it be truly conceived, is neither bodily working nor ghostly working, and shortly to say, it is a working against nature, and the devil is the chief worker thereof. And it is the readiest way to death of body and of soul, for it is madness, and no wisdom, and leadeth a man even to madness. And yet they ween not thus, for they purpose them in this work to think on naught but on God. Here beginneth the 52nd. How these young presumptuous disciples misunderstand this word in carat and of the deceits that follow thereon. And on this manner is this madness wrought that I speak of. They read, and hear well said that they should leave outward working with their wits, and work inwards. And because that they know not which is inward work, therefore they work wrong. For they turn their bodily wits inwards, to their body against the course of nature, and strain them, as they would see inwards with their bodily eyes and hear inwards with their ears, and so forth of all their wits, smelling, tasting, and feeling inwards. And thus they reverse them against the course of nature, and with this curiosity 238 cloud of unknowing they travail their imagination so in discreetly, that at the last they turn their brain in their heads. And then as fast the devil hath power for to feign some false light or sounds, sweet smells in their noses, wonderful tastes in their mouths, and many quaint heats and burnings in their bodily breasts or in their bowels, in their backs and in their reins and in their members. And yet in this fantasy them think that they have a restful remembrance of their God without any letting of vain thoughts, and surely so have they in manner, for they be so filled in falsehood that vanity may not provoke them. And why? Because he, that same fiend that should minister vain thoughts to them and they were in good way, he, that same, is the chief worker of this work. And wit thou right well, that him list not to let himself the remembrance of God will he not put from them, for fear that he should be had in suspect. Here beginneth the 53 of divers unseemly practices that follow them that lack the work of this book. Many wonderful practices follow them that be deceived in this false work, or in any species thereof, beyond that doth them that be God's true disciples. For they be evermore full seemly in all their practices, bodily or ghostly. But it is not so of these other. For whoso would or might, Jay behold unto them where they sit in this time, and it so were that their eye lids were open, he should see them stare as they were mad, and leeringly look as if they saw the devil. Surely it is good they be wary, for truly the fiend is not far. Some set their eyes in their heads as they were sturdy 240 cloud of unknowing.